Right, great. So we should be on YouTube as well. If you have to leave, if you have other things scheduled, because there are lots of events today, I'm conscious of that. You can always catch the replay on YouTube. My channel is Debra Callender, Dementia Care and Physiotherapy. If you type in Debra Callender, it will usually bring up the channel, and then you can watch the replay there, as well as the replays for Dementia Caribbean 1 and 2. So first of all, I want to take a moment to express my really deep gratitude to our esteemed speakers, two of whom are already here, Patricia Naraindutt and Rianna Patterson. Patricia is Guyanese extraction, and she's Guyanese, not even Guyanese extraction. She has the same name as my mom, and this webinar takes place on my mom's birthday. My mom passed around 2 years ago, and she had dementia when she was passing. Rianna Patterson out at Dominica. I've known Rianna for a very long time virtually. Sorry, someone has raised their hand. Go ahead, Yashin. Did you raise your hand on purpose? I see raised hands here. Do you want to put it in the chat? Let me just look at the question and answer. Hi, Carl Case. Also totally happy to see Carl Case in the audience. Carl Case is again out of the United Kingdom, lots of United Kingdom links. My very, very good friend, although again, like Rianna, very good virtual friends. We need to, next time I get to the UK, we need to link up, but let me not get distracted. So I want to thank the speakers for sharing their time, their expertise, their passion for dementia advocacy and dementia care. And also, it needs to be said, for giving their time and expertise free of cost. Today's session is richer because of your contributions to it. So thank you very much. Dementia Caribbean was originally created to raise awareness, educate, and introduce ideas and concepts about dementia in a way that is relevant to and representative of our particular region. As we gather, I think it's always important for me to just have a really quick summary about dementia, because yes, we're still there in the region. So dementia really is a broad term that describes a decline in cognitive function, and that's a decline that is severe enough to interfere with daily life function. It affects memory, thinking, language, judgment, and behavior. It is not a single disease. It is really more of a syndrome, and it is caused by various brain disorders. Rianna, who is coming off of UCL's master's program, she can give you way more detail on that. I'm not going to get into the complexities of pathology in great detail here today. That's not our purpose. But dementia typically occurs in older adults. It is not a part of normal aging. That always needs to be said. And there are young onset and hereditary forms of dementia as well, okay? There are several key subtypes. You can say 5 or 6, it depends on how you discuss them. The major, most well-known one is Alzheimer's disease, that accounts really for 60 to 80% of the cases of dementia worldwide. It's characterized by progressive memory loss, confusion, and they tend to have a lot of verbal difficulties with language, really. And that is caused by protein dysfunction in the brain, 2 proteins, amyloid and tau. Not going to bore you to death, but the disease process, the inflammation, the decreased neurotransmitters, the actual physical features in the brain all combine to give us cell death and a lot more difficulty with transmission of messages. And that is also true for our Lewy body dementias and our Parkinson's dementias, which share another physical brain pathology called Lewy body dementia. Lewy body dementia causes visual hallucinations, motor symptoms similar to Parkinson's, which is its sister disease. And typically we will want to say Parkinson's leads with movement difficulties. Lewy body will tend to lead with the things like the hallucinations and the fluctuations in alertness and attention. But as they progress, they resemble more and more, and they have the same struggles. Frontotemporal dementia is very dear to my heart and highly underdiagnosed in the Caribbean. FTD leads to changes in personality, behavior, and language, and it is the most common disease. the most common dementia in people younger than 65. Typically, it also progresses more quickly than the other types of dementia. And then last but certainly not least in our region, we have vascular dementia. This often occurs after a stroke or due to chronic reduced brain flow in the brain, blood flow in the brain. Sorry, guys, I talk fast. And that is what leads to the cognitive decline. And vascular dementia doesn't really lead with memory either. It tends to lead with impaired judgment, trouble with planning tasks and organization, slower processing time. So people might take a longer time to respond if you ask them to perform something or to answer you. What we would call processing speed or processing time. And it often follows, but not always, but often follows a noticeable cardiovascular events. So as we gather today, having given that really quick, I hope, summary of the dementias for everyone, because we always want people to take away, especially in this year where we're talking so much about stigma. We want people to understand that dementia is way more than memory loss, and it is certainly not normal aging. As we gather, we also want to talk about stigma, because this affects individuals globally and certainly in the Caribbean, in my experience. And the stigma that surrounds dementia it remains a major barrier to accessing early care, early diagnosis, most importantly, and support. So much so that Alzheimer's Disease International, which is a major nonprofit for dementia globally, has really made stigma its theme for this year's World Alzheimer's Day. And the report attached to that, the World Alzheimer's report, is out tomorrow, September the 20th. I've stuck some links in the chat. The first one is ALZINT, which is Alzheimer's Disease International's linkage. And I would encourage you to go ahead and look at their page and sign up to look at the launch of that report. So stigma often stems from misunderstandings, fear, and the commonly held idea is that people with dementia cannot learn, they cannot make decisions, they are frequently behaving inappropriately. We have a lot of these misconceptions. They cannot work. We have a lot of these misconceptions, and they are very harmful, not just to the people living with dementia, but to society in general. Dementia is also seen often as something to be ashamed of. And this leads to a lot of social isolation for the people living with dementia and also for their families and caregivers. We really all need to take steps to break the stigma down, both as individuals and a collective society. Becoming dementia-friendly always starts with education and awareness. I am often surprised in the 2 years that I have been back by how little even the caregivers of the people living with dementia know about it, despite a lot of readily available information. So I've stuck some links in the chat. My hope is that as caregivers will come to see themselves as advocates for people living with dementia, because at some point they may not be able to speak for themselves, or because of our medical settings, which are so time constrained, they may have difficulty expressing their needs in such a time constrained environment. Dementia cannot be medicated away. Sometimes following medical directions blindly can have disastrous results. And so I want my caregivers to be empowered to understand that because of how individual the experience of dementia is, and also how well you know the person living with dementia, you know them best. Medical care is always positively impacted by your input. And that with some expert guidance initially, you as the caregivers are best positioned to manage most dementia symptoms, including, yes, those challenging behaviors that you experience. Yeah. I constantly advocate for the use of non-pharmacological interventions in conjunction with the relevant, appropriate cognitive medications. We also know or should know that many medications, notably our anticholinergics and our antipsychotics, negatively impact dementias and can accelerate disease progression, deterioration, and precipitate death. How can we protect our people living with dementia if we don't have this information? How do we navigate an emergency room situation, for example, where doctors have to try to make right care decisions very rapidly if we don't have a care plan, an idea of what our loved ones wish for, and a prepared information sheet that talks about things like diagnosis and medication? How do we defend our ability to have a say in our loved ones' medical care if we have no legal standing? So I really want our caregivers to think about these things and really become better advocates. I know you're trying, I know you're doing your best, but I really want to raise these things. We also need to remember that whatever information we have, we need to use it to protect and defend the rights of our person living with dementia. We should all become more aware of how we speak about and portray dementia, right? Would a person, ask yourself this question, would a person that you speak to, that is watching you speak about dementia, would they feel comfortable raising their memory loss with you? We know oftentimes that family and friends are the people who can encourage a person who has these initial symptoms to act towards an early diagnosis. For those of us that are not directly impacted by dementias yet, we can learn to recognize the signs, please, of early dementia, approach conversations with empathy, and offer practical and emotional support to those who are affected. Educating yourself and others is really key, because once we understand the challenges, we can start to build a more inclusive community. There are many reliable free resources. I've stuck them in the chat. Some examples, those are not, there's an exhaustive list. That's not an exhaustive list there, but I've stuck a few examples in the chat. Many reliable resources, ADI, the American Frontotemporal Disease Association, Parkinson's, or Dementia UK, I always mention, because it's such a great resource as well. And we have Carl here, so check out Carl Case as well. I'll see if I can later on share some resources that he has out of Sussex Memory Hub, I believe. Carl, if I've said it wrong, you can correct me. It's either Suffolk or Sussex. So I get a lot of videos about the fringe aspects of dementia, people claiming to be cured, etc. I would love us to devote more time and sharing to circulating the reliable evidence-backed information that our nonprofits provide. As a society, we should really think about creating environments where people with dementia feel safe, respected, and supported. We need to advocate for policies, develop community programs that encourage inclusion, and invest in care services. And our policies, programs, and investment must recognize and meet the unique needs of our region, not just an agenda of an international agency or a dementia organization. In the Caribbean, we are uniquely positioned to address dementia in a way that reflects our shared values of community and family. Jamaica has a well-developed legislative framework, as does Trinidad and Tobago, that all of the Caribbean can model and improve on. This includes a Disabilities Act, provisions for power of attorney, and precedent in issues like do not resuscitate. And these are things we need to think about as we progress in the journey with dementia. While there's always room for amendment and the introduction of further legislation, which you'll hear about later, it is a start. We must remember that dementia doesn't just affect individuals, it affects entire families and communities. And by fostering greater understanding, we can turn communities into supported networks that enable those with dementia to live with dignity, purpose, and ensure that caregivers receive the help that they need and the support. Today's speakers will bring us invaluable insights on how we can take care of we can take action, and reduce stigma, offer better support, and become dementia friendly in our everyday lives. Their work across different sectors, whether it's advocacy, legal reform, caregiver support, health education initiatives, these actions help to pave the way for a brighter future in dementia care in the Caribbean. By working together, let's try and shift the narrative now around dementia to something more positive and inclusive and productive, and also something that is sustainable for people that live in the Caribbean. When this happens, we'll have made a lasting impact. Let's continue the conversation, let's continue to advocate, and let's continue to try to build a dementia-friendly Caribbean. So thank you for your time and listening to my opening remarks. I've wound up on time because I'm super excited to get into my speakers. I'm so happy to have one of my speakers today. And the very first speaker that I have, and I'm so happy to have her, I don't think I have words for it. I'm just going to tell you guys. I've known her, I've got in touch with Rianna, I think before I started my master's? I don't even remember for how long. I think it's before I started it, Rianna. You can correct me if it's wrong.
Yeah,
if you
probably,
can even remember.
either before or like when you got the Chevening scholarship, I think we were in touch.
I'm so thrilled. And Rianna met me with just so much support. And I'm totally thrilled that no. So I have my MSc from Brighton and Sussex Medical School, and I'm super pleased for Rianna to join me now as with her master's in dementia. And she got it from the very prestigious, it's highly recognized in Jamaica. We have a strong network of UCL graduates here, University College of London, excellent research standard, one of the best universities in the UK, certainly for dementia research. So, but I'm not thrilled to have Rianna just for that. I'm thrilled to have Rianna because, as I said, I've followed Rianna for a while, and she's such a wonderful person, very dynamic. So Rianna Patterson founded the Dominica Dementia Foundation at age 18 in memory of her grandfather. Since then, she has been a tireless advocate, a voice for older people in forums such as the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings. Rianna is one of the principal researchers and authors of the Dementia in the Commonwealth Report, created by Commonwealth Aging Association, known as Common Age, and she holds a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in dementia from UCL, as I've said. She's interested in aging, health policy and advocacy, and international development. Please welcome Rianna Patterson for me, everyone. Rianna, take it away. I'm so happy to have you here.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Debra. Let me try and share my screen. Okay. Right. Bear with me. Let me just optimize the screen. Okay. Can you see my screen, Debra, Patricia?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I can see it.
Excellent. So yes, thanks again, Debra, for this opportunity to speak in this very important forum. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, I should say, because, I know we're tuning in from everywhere. But yes, my name is Rianna Patterson, and I will be speaking about Caribbean statistics on the prevalence, incidence, and impact of dementia. So I will skip the intro because Debra kind of said it all. But yes, I am the founder of the Dominica Dementia Foundation. And most recently, I hold a master's degree from the University College London, UCL, in dementia. So the prevalence of dementia in Latin America and Caribbean countries is 8.5% and is projected to increase to 19.33% by 2050. As we know, dementia is a growing concern in the Caribbean due to the region's aging populations. We have aging populations in Dominica, in Jamaica, in St. Vincent and other islands. So Alzheimer's Disease International forecasts that 740,000 people will be affected by dementia in the Caribbean. There's another statistic that says only 16% of Caribbean countries have made progress in developing a national plan or national dementia plan, mainly due to inadequate funding. So there is a global discussion on national dementia plans, as these documents help to steer the line of direction between policy and community support. And this can help raise the profile of dementia and implement further dementia services to improve the quality of life of people with dementia in the Caribbean. Like most research on dementia in the Caribbean focuses on Latin Caribbean communities, but my thesis, for example, aimed to explore national policies for aging and dementia in English-speaking Caribbean countries. So in the Caribbean, there is an estimate of 4,000 Barbadians or Bajans over the age of 60 living with dementia, with a projected 8,000 persons living with the condition by 2050. So that is like 167% increase, which is quite high. Also, according to the Lancet, 574 people are known to be living with dementia in Dominica. There's other islands like Anguilla and Jamaica who provide convalescent homes, which are homes that support people in recovery from illness. And this has also been embedded in the national policy on care facilities for older people in Anguilla, which is good to see. So these are a few of my results from my master thesis that I just wanted to kind of share as well. So I found that 20 English-speaking Caribbean countries do not have a national plan for dementia. So BVI, British Virgin Islands, Dominica, and Trinidad and Tobago are working on developing a national plan for dementia in their respective countries. There's also, a number of national dementia plans implemented, which remain unchanged since 2022 at 39 in the Caribbean. So this is the wider Caribbean, the English, the French, and Spanish-speaking Caribbean islands. So yes, the impact of no dementia plans in the Caribbean means that the opportunity to raise the profile and establish dementia services is not being tapped into. So a dementia plan can help support caregivers through allocated budgets for training, respite, and daycare services and activities for people living with dementia. It is worth noting that most government policies do not have a structured format that outlines a clear set of principles, objectives, or actions for addressing the burden of dementia. So these principles should be integrated into general mental health, aging, NCDs, or disability policies and frameworks. So further results show that there is a focus on the treatment of other conditions such as diabetes, as we're aware of, which seems to be of greater importance in Caribbean countries compared to other member states. However, policies regarding to dementia are being increasingly incorporated into national policies. So like national policies on aging are starting to show, considerations for dementia in their host country. So that's also good to see. This is further results from my master's thesis. So it shows that there is still work that needs to be done to increase the number of national dementia plans by member states. There are several barriers which have been identified in developing a national plan, such as a lack of political leadership in dementia, not viewing dementia as a priority, and lack of laws related to people living with dementia. So that is that result. And then just for context, there's a quote that came from the master's thesis, finding in relation to barriers and challenges, including the stigma of dementia and the caregiving burden. So there seems to be a gap in the training provided to caregivers and the coping strategies offered in current services. So there is a perception of either understaffing in formal care facilities or overcrowding of citizens within services, in addition to improper care towards older people. Yes, the caregiver's voice could also be beneficial in implementing initiatives at a national level, as it could improve the quality of care of people with dementia and the need for a national dementia plan. So this is another example where funding seems to be an issue. I also want to kind of indicate that there was another example where community voice influenced policy, which was in Trinidad and Tobago. The National Policy on Aging was developed in 2000, in the year 2000, as a response to a symposium where comments were made on a social welfare issue. Yes, further additions, there seems to be a gap in the training provided to caregivers. And we can see this through this quote where there's a stigma of dementia, and this can put older people at risk of elder abuse due to the lack of understanding of the condition that affects older people. And this quote came from Jamaica, and it was included in the National Policy on Aging. So to conclude, there have been cases where the national plans were developed by local charities and endorsed by the government. It appears that local governments primarily engage with the community through consultations during policies and development processes. However, such engagements seem to be continual and integrated in their regular responsibilities rather than being prompted by the need to develop a special or specific policy. And further research should look into the effectiveness of existing aging policies and dementia plans where possible, understanding the impact to provide an insight into how these policies support aging communities, including people living with dementia. And this could also be insights to policymakers and other stakeholders So furthermore, further research should help to identify the gaps highlighted in this review. So thank you so much for your attention. I hope it wasn't too much to take in and it was all very understandable. And here's a list of references you can also refer to as well. Thank you so much.
Rianna, excellent as always. Let me also say, because after today, if anyone needs to find Rianna, has any questions for Rianna, etc., that you're not doing right now in the chat, please, guys, reach out to me. Everybody knows my phone number. Everybody knows my email, Home Care for Jamaica. Everyone, make sure that you reach out to me if you want to contact Rianna further. Because as I said, we are trying to, I would like to join hands across the region. We've really got to cooperate and we need as many voices as possible. I want to thank everybody who jumped in and told me that the chat was disabled. Thank you guys a million times for that. Carl Case, thank you so much for correcting me. It is Sheffield Memory Hub and he's doing fantastic stuff there. Guys, go and follow Carl Case on LinkedIn. I'm telling you, it's everything. I've shared his links also in the chat. Please take advantage of them. He has some really great reminisce resources for each island. Ren, I think you might have seen them as well, but they're totally great. So for people who want to reminisce about like what was happening in St. Lucia or wherever, guys, have a look at Carl's resources. They are, as this generation would say, they're fire. I don't have another word for them. So please go and check that out as well. I've reshared all of the links I was talking about for Alzheimer's and for Alzheimer's Disease International, for Parkinson's Organization, and so on. Dementia UK, guys, just type it in. They're a fantastic resource for caregivers as well. And I'm just skimming through the Q&A and the question and answer. If anyone has any questions for Rianna, you can feel free to stick it in the question and answer. I don't know how long I'll have her. Rianna is a busy girl, but you can drop them in the Q&A. Everyone, I had asked when the chat was disabled, I had said, please drop where you're coming from in the chat. So feel free to do that. I'm really pleased to see so many Jamaicans here as well. Welcome, Andrew McPherson. I believe, I know me and Cheryl had spoken yesterday, Cheryl Lloyd, Greeks Lloyd. And she had said, Cheryl Greeks Lloyd. So these are people coming out of the University of the West Indies nursing program. Thank you so much. I love to have my nurses here. I think we don't have enough resources as yet for them, certainly not in Jamaica. And we are working, I know I'm working really hard. I've roped Cheryl in. We're working really hard in trying to get a lot of that stuff done. Hi, Nikolai from Jamaica as well. Stacy, who's also in my support group. Emilia Osborne, lots of Jamaica here this morning. And Carl is from the UK. Trinidadian tuning in from London. Hi, Ariel. So happy to see you guys. Janelle, Shanoya, all of you guys, thank you so much. I love the love I get from Jamaica. I'm telling you, it is, I don't have the words for it. So if anybody has any questions for Rianna, remember you can stick it in the Q&A now and later. Rianna, you have access, you should have access to the Q&A. So you can check that. If you do and you don't want to, if you don't want to wait and you want to type it into the chat and answer them, you can also do that. I have to welcome our fourth panelist, Camille Bennet Campbell. Hello, Camille. Camille is another person that I have so much love for Camille, you guys cannot know. She is an attorney at law. Everybody in Jamaica, go bother Camille about anything to do with disability, anything to do with, is it employment, Camille? Unmute yourself.
Employment law, sorry. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, you are? Go ahead. Disability law.
Employment law, those are my
Yes.
main areas, although I go into others, but those are my main loves. And when the Occupational Safety and Health Act passes, I'm your person.
Yes, please, everybody go bother Camille because she's fantastic, such a calm person. Hi, Marcia from Jamaica, Genevieve. Wow, I'm telling you, thank you guys. Keep dropping it in the chat for me. I super love having all of this. Let me stop blabbing now and get into my presentation. So give me 1 minute, guys, because I'm so busy here. I don't think I've even opened my PowerPoint yet. So let me jump into that really quickly and open it for you. Okay, great. So here we are. Let's get back to Zoom and to share it. So I want to talk coming off of my chat about, coming off of my introduction about talking about stigma and awareness, the need for education and awareness. I want to talk about us becoming dementia friendly, and how we need to look at the tools to do that, and how we can do that effectively. What are the aspects that we need to look at to do that? Sorry, a couple of minutes here, guys. I totally apologize. And me and Patricia were in the practice session for this reason. We were in the practice session talking about how, you just, there's always something that's gonna, that's not gonna go completely smoothly. So please forgive me for this. All right, so let's share. Nice. Can everybody see my screen? Let me get all of this.
Yeah, we can see it.
And let's see if we can get the slideshow started. I'll get everything out of the way. Okay, so this morning, really briefly, I would like to talk about becoming dementia friendly. As everybody knows by now, my name, I work in dementia care and physiotherapy in Jamaica currently. And let's talk about what does it really mean to become dementia friendly or to be dementia friendly. I see Victoria has raised her hand. Victoria, I'll come to you in a minute. So being dementia friendly is about this: respecting, including, and supporting individuals with dementia, allowing them to live with independence and dignity. And how we begin to do that is by addressing the stigma associated with the condition. So the next question obviously is, what is stigma? Stigma is the negative attitudes, misconceptions, and prejudices that surround individuals living with dementia. And stigma is rooted really in fear and misunderstanding. Okay, and there are many ways in which dementia stigma is expressed. Right, it can be expressed as things like stereotyping. Unfortunately, people with dementia are often stereotyped, as I mentioned already, into these things about being incapable or overly dependent, and we make a lot of unfair assumptions about what they can do, what their abilities are, and what their potential is. Okay, and also myths. I mean, we have a lot of sort of aluminum foil causes dementia, or my African counterparts will tell you witchcraft. There are lots of things that we have these sort of legends around dementia that really are not true. Discrimination is another expression of dementia. They may experience exclusion, unfair treatment in social, healthcare, and workplace settings. Especially, I know many Jamaicans who have hid early diagnoses because of their fear of being dismissed in work settings. Call Camille, guys, call Camille. There's the social isolation is another expression of stigma. Friends, family, and society in general, seems to want to avoid you when you have these diagnoses, and it leaves the person living with dementia and the caregiver as well feeling really isolated and unsupported. They also can internalize the stigma themselves. The person living with dementia, probably, oftentimes before we had a dementia diagnosis ourselves, we had some thoughts about dementia that we might have also, and when we get dementia, we've internalized all of this negativity about it, which it does lead to, feelings of shame, feelings of embarrassment. And I get a lot of my people, my PLWDs, a lot of them talk about how useless they feel, how much they don't feel they're able to contribute. So it does really impact their self-worth, unfortunately. And this stigma creates barriers to care. So obviously, if you have all of these negative impressions, these negative understandings, and you're afraid that other people are going to judge you or exclude you, You may not seek a diagnosis early, which is really, really important, because if you get an early diagnosis, we can, we can treat, we can delay progression. We don't want to you don't want to put yourself in a position where basically you're worsening your own condition because you're not getting it diagnosed. Another myth, jumping back to that really quickly, is that there's absolutely nothing to be done once you have a diagnosis of dementia. That is a complete myth. There's a lot that can be done. We can delay progression with the use of drugs, with the use of, I use cognitive stimulating therapy. There are many ways that we can exercise, physical activity. There are many ways that we can work towards delaying the progression. So why do we need to address dementia stigma? I feel like I've covered it, but let's talk a bit on the impact of stigma for individuals and communities, right? So we've talked about the fact that they have this social exclusion, they feel marginalized, and it means that they're hesitant to seek help. The isolation, which makes dementia symptoms worse, as we should all know, after COVID. And it also reduces, because obviously as your world shrinks, you're less interested also in, as people disappoint you, as you have negative experiences around it, you're less interested in looking for support. You're less interested in getting treatment because you don't want to have another negative experience. And it causes a lot of avoidance and delay. I know a lot of people who don't even want to hear the word. Like, I use cognitive impairments a lot because, or neurocognitive, challenge or something else, because people don't really want to hear that they have dementia. They're afraid of other people hearing it as well. And we have to remember that this really causes delays in progression. This causes delay in diagnosis. And it worsens, it means that we see you at a later point, you're already further progressed than we would like. And it affects your quality of life, yours and the quality of your caregivers. On the level of society, we really need to work on awareness, because where we are scared and ignorant about things, it retards our efforts to create things that are inclusive and services for people living with dementia. And it also really discourages investment in research, because people say, is there any interest in that? I get that a lot. Oh, is there any interest in that? Yes, there is. I have a 100-person strong support group. So there is a lot of need, okay? And where we don't understand about these things, we don't get funding for support. We don't get funding for the caregivers' resources. We don't get funding for the things that are needed to make the person living with dementia's life better. I'm going to just use John as a quick example. He's a composite, so I'm not violating our data protection laws or anything else. But this is I've come across, he's a composite of a couple of our male patients. Our male patients tend to be young. I wouldn't say patients, let's say clients. They tend to be younger, 80 years old. Lots of them have worked overseas for many years, and they come home, and usually within a year or two, the family will notice the struggles. Often because it's not memory loss, because most people just think all dementias are memory loss. Again, the lack of information. People just assume it's normal old age, and they leave them alone with it until it begins to interfere with their ability to do everyday tasks, and someone has to really, become a caregiver essentially for the person. The family, in their cases, these families still are trying to find out what caused the dementia. Never mind, I've already explained, we don't really know what causes dementia. We talk about the risk factors coming off of Lancet's 14 risk factors, etc. But we still have, because of the lack of information, and also because of the shame, where we are ashamed of things, we want to find something to blame for it. And when I've met most of my male patients, I've had to send them for formal diagnosis, because again, with the lack of awareness, they didn't even know that you would need, you can access medication, and there are other things that we can do. So I'm just using a more personal example to bring it home, like what the impact of not having awareness and the fear of being judged about it can bring about. Right, so how can we become more friendly as an individual? more dementia-friendly as an individual. You can educate yourself, and you can also educate others, right? Make sure that you challenge misconceptions. So we want to share resources that we have, you know, myself, everyone here, the Dementia Caribbean, Rianna's Dominica Foundation, resources that are Caribbean or Carl Case, resources that are Caribbean oriented, but also the wider nonprofits, so people can also get just general information as well. We want to make sure that we counter myths and misconceptions when we hear them. You don't have to be rude, but it is good, it's important to address it. And then we also want to make sure that we're encouraging conversations that are about understanding and reducing fear of dementia. I spend a lot of my time talking to just anyone who approaches me, even in social settings, so that we can all get a better understanding of things. We need to also begin to engage more with people living with dementia. Unfortunately, in Jamaica, a lot of these people are hidden. I interact with people living with dementia for most of my day. And I can tell you, it's actually quite a fun experience. We need to include where we have a person living with dementia. Please include them in conversations, include them in family gatherings, include them in the social settings. Don't stick them away in a room and say, okay, well, you know, when we finish with the party, we'll, you know, let them come out, let them do what they can. And let them play with them, let the grandkids interact with them, include them, let them, you know, be in the kitchen with you doing whatever they can manage, include them, okay? Respect their opinions and their experiences and recognize that they still have a voice. And most importantly, we've got to support our caregivers, right? Offer practical and emotional support to them. And recognize that they, aside from them having a lot going on, they also might be facing stigma. So, you know, keep an open mind and, you know, ask them what they need instead of assuming, and be prepared to listen. Listening in itself is a real big gift. How do we become dementia-friendly as a society? By creating dementia-friendly communities, as I've spoken about in my introduction. Dementia-friendly communities also involve practical things like including proper signage for people, training all public-facing staff so they understand how to interface with a person living with dementia in a way that doesn't have a negative result, and also offering accessible services. I'm really proud of Jamaica. We have an environmental agency, NEPA, and they've done a lot in terms of creating accessibility to buildings for people with disability. I'm very proud of that. I'm bragging on Jamaica, but I mean, everybody feel free to jump in and say we have this everywhere else too. Policy and advocacy, we do need to advocate for policies that support dementia care, healthcare access, and workplace accommodations for our caregivers. A lot of our caregivers work a full day. Camille is here looking at me. Camille's a caregiver as well. A lot of our caregivers work a whole full day and come home and then deal with everything to do with their parents and so on. We've got to do better on that for sure. And advocacy is how we bring these things into people's awareness. You know, someone who is not a caregiver right now might not understand what a demand that is. And certainly for Jamaicans, I think this is true all over the world. Jamaicans, you would never know that they're having all of this going on. They're always well groomed, well presented, calm, polite. So we don't assume that you know, we do need to advocate for support and enact legislation. Camille will talk about the Disability Act this time around. That ensures that the rights of people living with dementia are protected, but also about our caregivers. I really feel we need to be giving them work breaks and so on, not to ramble. Like they maybe should work less hours, they maybe should get tax breaks. I think there are lots of ways that we could support caregivers in the Caribbean in terms of making their load lighter and allowing them also to continue to earn, because a lot of caregivers are providing all of the financial resources for their caregiving. They don't have a lot. We have social support in Jamaica, but it's not that big as yet. It's still developing. What is most important, I want everyone to take this away, is there is absolutely a role for everyone in creating a dementia-friendly society. It's a shared responsibility. Every one of us can play a role, whether it's through direct care for someone, by supporting someone in your community, or just being kind and understanding, especially when you see someone struggling with something or maybe taking long in the checkout line and so on. You know, if we can just be kind and patient, I think that's the most important thing. So to wrap it up really quickly, my summary. If we become dementia friendly, we challenge stigma, we build empathy, and we create a world where people living with dementia can live with dignity, inclusion, and purpose. Combating stigma must be the first step towards building that a dementia-friendly society. So everybody, I want you to ask yourselves, go home and think about this, make notes on this. How can you contribute to making your community more inclusive and supportive for people living with dementia? Thank you for listening. Anybody who still doesn't know where to find me, these are my social media handles and my email, which is homecare4Jamaica, for JA. You also can email dementia-caribbean@gmail, because this has a particular email for this event has an email associated for it because it just makes my life easier. Thank you guys for listening to me. I hope I'm still on time. I believe I am. Thanks, Patricia. Regis is clapping me. Let me look at, wow, 82 comments in the chat. Let's have a look at the chat, shall we? Because there are 82 comments in the chat, and I see, but I think the 82 comments in the chat are people telling me where they're from. I'm looking at the question and answer section. If anybody has questions for me on dementia care, please let me know. On not dementia care, on being dementia friendly and how you can particularly do that, please let me know. Hi, Geraldine. I'm happy that you made it. Geraldine, I'm so pleased to see you. Everybody who is here, Carol, Xavier, hi, I'm so happy. A lot of these people, I've met them all over. Oh, thank you. Amazing presentation. Norman Manley High School, thank you. I'm really, really happy to see you here as well. So if no one has any further questions, let me just jump back to the Q&A really quickly. No. Then without further ado, let's move on to, and if you think of questions later, ladies and gentlemen, feel free to stick it in, you know, and as I said, you can always find me afterwards and go ahead and ask those questions. So next up for us is my friend Camille, Bennet Campbell. So excited for this talk. I'm excited for every talk, but honestly. So Camille is the principal consultant of her own law firm, Bennet Campbell Law. She has nearly 25 years of legal experience. She holds an LLB from UWI and an LMN from the University of Leicester. Her expertise spans labor, employment, disability law, and occupational safety. And she has over 13 years of experience honed at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security in Jamaica. It's a big ministry here because they have a lot of work. She played a really key role in coming to your car. She played a key role in the passage of the Disabilities Act in Jamaica, which was it passed in 2014? I think it was. It's dated 2014. And she is a caregiver for her mom and her dad. She has this really lovely mom, Rima, who I also attend as a physiotherapist. Super love Rima. She's like such a light. And she really has a special heart. I can attest to this personally. For senior citizens and for the disabled, and she now focuses on assisting with their legal needs. So without further ado, I'm going to let Camille get into her presentation. I hope everybody has a snack and some tea. 1 second, Camille, because law, law discussions are a thing, right? Law discussions are a thing. Carl, thank you for your encouragement as usual. I'm really grateful for it. Thanks for that. Okay, so Camille, let's go into your presentation. We're all ready.
Okay, are you seeing my screen, everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
Whoa, that was great. Of work this time. Thanks for the practice.
Yeah, practice sessions work.
So what I have tried to do for you is to condense the Disabilities Act to highlight some key provisions, because if I had to get into all the act, we'd be here for a very long time. And I focused on an examination of dementia in the context of the Disabilities Act 2014 Jamaica. Okay.
Can you reposition your mic a little bit? Some of the people, you're a little bit soft.
Okay, hold on. Let me see this. I need to change the screen, Debra, because I see you're all blocking.
Put your cursor in it and move it. Put your cursor in and move the speakers column.
I have. All right, let me just look for the volume a minute.
So guys, let us know in the chat if you can hear her better.
Going into the audio settings now.
They're just accustomed to me and my big mouth.
Yeah. I don't have to shout
so
if it
loud.
comes to it.
I talk so loud, I'm telling you. So ladies, this is for all of you. Carl Case is saying, thanking you. Well, he's thanking me and Rianna. So important for us all to focus on the support caregivers require, too often overlooked and underappreciated. Wait for it, Carl. Patricia is coming to talk specifically about the care of the caregiver. So we've got you on that. Okay,
it's at 100, so obviously I'm going to have to shout. Are you hearing me?
I can hear you. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, are you hearing? Put it in the chat. Stacy says yes. Helen says yes. Hi, Helen.
Okay,
Nice
and if I don't know, just tell me. I'm going to keep shouting until the end. It's not long.
Hi, Melissa. Joy Thomas Whittle. All right, let me stop now. Everybody, go for it. Go for it.
So the Disabilities Act was passed in 2014. It was a long road. But although it was passed in 2014, I should tell you, this act did not come into effect until 8 years later on February 14, 2022. This means you actually could not have enforced the provisions. Now, there are many reasons for that long delay that I won't get into, because that goes back into my time at the ministry. But I did not leave the ministry until the act came into effect, because it was important to me. Now, this groundbreaking piece of legislation seeks to promote, protect, and enhance the full and equal enjoyment for persons with disabilities. Now, I will use PWDs in this presentation for persons with disabilities, not dementia, right? So whenever I say PWD, it's persons with disabilities. So the point is that they must have access to the same privileges, interests, benefits, and treatments on an equal basis with every other persons. So you will always find the words equal based on other persons. Those are persons without disability. Now, in this presentation, I'll examine the provisions of the Act, well, the ones I can, and the extent to which it is applicable to persons with dementia, and then I'll seek to give you some key takeaways. Objectives of the bill, there are many. I will highlight a few. To reinforce and promote recognition and acceptance within Jamaica of the principle that a person with a disability has the same fundamental rights as any other person in Jamaica. There was no legislation specifically saying that before. You have the Constitution, but it's not specific to persons with disability. So there was a gap that had to be filled. We did have the national policy, but because it had no teeth, it was just a policy to guide. So promote individual dignity and autonomy, including freedom of choice and independence of a person with a disability. So if persons are able to make their own decisions, they should be allowed to do so. Yeah. This one speaks to participation and inclusion in society. That's another objective. Importantly, prevent or prohibit discrimination against a PWD. So that's an important objective. Key terms in the Act, there are many, but I think for this presentation, these are the most relevant. Caregiver. Defined all the definitions are found in section 2 of the Act. And I will share in the chat after I forgot to do that, where you can access the Act. This term refers to a parent, legal guardian, or any other person responsible for caring for the health, financial, physical security, and general well-being of a person with a disability. So it is not just limited to legal guardian. From you're taking care of a person with a disability, you are a caregiver, and I will show you where you have a role to play. Discrimination, it means any distinction, exclusion, or restriction on the basis of disability, which has the purpose or effect of impairing or nullifying the recognition and enjoyment, and you know, the same things I'll be saying again. Equality, on an equal basis with others. And it names legal interests, rights, example, cultural, but it's not limited. That was just giving examples of the areas of discrimination. I am not going to tell you the definition of the disproportionate or undue burden because you will not understand it. I will try to work it into a practical example. Healthcare provider, it's also defined, means a person or institution whose work is to identify, prevent, treat, or care for persons with illnesses or disabilities. So, importantly, before I forget, this Act binds the crowd. It applies to the government as well as private persons, because the government has to lead the way and set the example. So this will apply to public hospitals, private hospitals, medical practitioners. As long as you're providing any kind of care to persons with disabilities, this Act is covering you, and you are given certain obligations under the Act to ensure equality. Important term, persons with disabilities, includes a person who has a long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which may hinder his full and effective participation in society as usual on an equal basis with other persons. So, in Jamaica legislation, you cannot be covered by the Act unless you fall within the parameters of this definition. Now, if you are here from UK and other countries, you realize you have a wider definition than Jamaica, right? But it was felt that Jamaica had to not go as wide at this point. And while we did adopt the UN Convention of Persons with Disabilities, we actually did not take all of the definition, the part to do with barriers, disability being more of a barrier than an impairment. The country did not feel, ready for that at this time. But the Act is to be reviewed within 5 years automatically of coming into effect. So we hope by then we would have progressed to the point where we can, add more to the Act, and we would have learned from case law any weaknesses. Reasonable arrangement is another key term you'll see in the presentation. That speaks to the modifications that you need to make to ensure that a person with a disability can effectively participate in society. For example, in the workplace. So this gives examples. It says includes provision of auxiliary aids and services such as hearing devices, wheelchairs, prosthetic appliances, computer software, use of interpreters, right? But remember that each disability is different. So the reasonable arrangement that you need to make will depend on the nature of the disability. So everybody is providing ramps. That is fine, but that is only for the physically disabled. So the Act is going to actually make you as a business person have to consider going forward. What other disability do I need to protect? Yes, it's great to have we're right now really treating the physically disabled in most contexts. Importantly, the Act establishes the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities. So Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, I will share their website in the chat. and it is a JCPD for short. This act, this body, every act needs somebody to administer it. This is the body that administers the act. It is a statutory body, it is government. It was a department in the Ministry of Labour, but because it was felt that the ministry also is covered by the act, it was removed. So it's a separate body, but government. And they are to administer the act, ensure there's public education, for example, prepare codes of practice. None of them are ready yet, unfortunately, which is very important for people to practically understand the act and what to do and what not to do. So hopefully they will get to that soon. Also, this body will advise the government, and you will see that if you have a complaint to make, this is the body that you make the complaint to if there's a breach of the act. Now, the act specifically highlights several areas for protection. I cannot go into all of them. I'm going to highlight, you can look at the screen for all, but I'm going to deal with protection from discrimination, employment because that is my area, and healthcare and facilities because it will be relevant for you. But when you have the time, there are other areas that you can look into. Discrimination, sections 24 and 25. It specifies that a PWD shall not, by reason of such disability, be subject to any form of discrimination. So it doesn't matter if the discrimination was not named here. I just gave some examples. It's still all discrimination that is prohibited. Sections 29 to 31 are important. They address employment. Because a problem is discrimination in the workplace. An employer is prohibited from discriminating against a person with a disability who is otherwise qualified for the job. You have the qualification. It can't be that just because you're a person with a disability and I have to make arrangements for you, that I can say to you, I'm not hiring you. You can't give different terms of employment to that employee because of disability. I can't offer you less wages, for example. In relation to opportunities, in relation to promotion and training, entitled to the same as any other worker. Importantly, by dismissing the worker or subjecting him to any detriment because of his disability without reasonable cause. Now, a worker who is not performing is a worker who is not performing. So it's not saying to you that you cannot dismiss any person with a disability. You must have a reasonable cause. And not only that, if the work is being affected because you have not made reasonable arrangements, you have to make reasonable arrangements. If they needed access to a particular device to carry out the work or software, you cannot, because of that, just dismiss the person. You would have had to make sure that you looked as to whether reasonable arrangements could be made first. Importantly, when an employee becomes disabled and is no longer capable of performing the tasks required by the contract of employment, the employer is required to redeploy the employee to a new position. And this doesn't matter if the injury was they got disabled because of the job. It could have been an accident privately. So the first thing everybody runs for medical redundancy and situations like that, you have an obligation to try and redeploy the employee. It's only if that is not possible, you can move from there. And they said this is provided there's no undue or disproportionate burden. So what happened is that the act has to also balance the interest. One second. My sinus gave me a long time before kicking in, but I'll soon be finished. So if it's really something that is too expensive based on the nature of the business, that is a defense. And a tribunal could look at that. However, the new position should suit the worker's current skills and abilities, but no loss in benefits and pay. So you cannot reduce the pay, even though you may have changed the position of the worker. That's understood?
Yes, and I think that's really interesting in the context of dementia, which we had kind of chatted about off screen. But I'll let you finish, because dementia, as we know, you will have those changes and you will have to make consideration of where they progress and, you know, whether or not it becomes about unreasonable burden and so on. But let me, I am following you, I think.
Okay. Healthcare providers, special place for you, and because you're in this seminar, I had to point to this. You're to provide healthcare without discrimination on the basis of a disability. You're to provide access to general healthcare services and facilities to persons with disabilities. And you also have in section, and this is section 35. You have minimum standards you have to comply with. Now, ensure that PWD has access to the same range and standard of affordable health services as provided to other persons. But you know the thing with that, if you're providing inferior health care to everybody, I wonder how does that work, because you're still being given equality. Provide health services
Exactly.
required because the standard is as other persons.
Right? But that's also an interesting part of this. I'm sorry to jump in, but I think what is interesting, because also listening to Rianna's talk as well about you know, like having a separate plan and so on. The thing is that when we make an act, it has an impact across other acts, right? So where you talk about healthcare, we also have to look at standards, right? And we know that certainly in Jamaica, we have separate councils and separate acts that govern each profession. So for me as a physiotherapist, I fall under the act and the council that speaks to allied medical professionals, etc. So it requires where you have one act, where you put in this act, it has a sort of like a ripple effect for other acts and acts that speak to standard, not acts, regulations and policies that speak to how our hospitals function. All of that has to be rethought when we introduce an act, for one thing, as you would know as a lawyer, but I'm really saying it for the people listening, right? That when we write one act, it's not like we write an act and that's it. It has to be thought through in the context of every other act that it impacts. And those acts now might have to be subject to amendment. And from the acts now, interpreted by the facilities that it would affect and stuff like that. Certainly in health, I can't speak for anything else.
And I must say, groups need to pay attention to these legislation. We have a problem in Jamaica where nobody pays attention to a law until it's passed. So if you even send off for comments, you don't have it. And then when the challenges come, then you hear. The act is going to be reviewed in 5 years. Should be watching what is going on so that if you need to, that you can actually do it. So what I've been sent to like Ministry of Health and so, but not necessarily to all the specialized groups and the groups that represent disabilities generally. All right. So provided with health services required because of their disability, including screening, early detection, treatment, and rehabilitation. I remember one time when my brother was alive with cerebral palsy, there was a doctor my father liked to carry him to. And no matter what is your complaint, he always wrote the same vitamins. Right? Because he just didn't want to get into medication with him, or he always had to find another doctor. So no, you don't do that. I mean, you're supposed to treat the person the same thing. You can know what will clash with the condition, but I mean, vitamins every time, no matter what is the complaint. Anyway, let's go along because of my time. Complaint mechanism. Person with a disability or his or her caregiver. So caregivers, you're allowed to make the complaint on the worker's behalf because the person may not be able to do so. So note that you can protect the interest, and the complaint is to be made to the same JCPD. Grounds of complaint include an act of discrimination carried out against a person with a disability, such as dismissing the person. Now, codes of practice are not yet in effect, but they can be, when they're in effect, breaching that can be grounds and breach of the act generally. The JCPD can also assist the aggrieved person. So say they don't have a caregiver who is willing to assist and they are able to come forward, or if the caregiver comes, the JCPD can actually assist by moving the matter forward. Now, I couldn't get into this too much, but a body is established called the Disabilities Rights Tribunal. That body will hear complaints and make awards or orders. similar to the Industrial Disputes Tribunal, but this one now will be tailored to disabilities. So the panelists will have some more experience in disabilities, not industrial relations. And this DRT, I will call it, Disabilities Rights Tribunal, can also make orders such as compensation, tell whoever is in breach to stop the action that you're doing now, you know, can put the person back in work if it's employment. So even you healthcare practitioners, they can carry you there for breaches of the act, and orders can be made against you. Now, quickly, trying to now merge with dementia. Note, the definition. This act only applies to PWDs as defined. So dementia will not be protected unless it's classified as a disability. Now, I don't think I'm going to get into what dementia is because I think the medical persons here would have done so and probably do a better job of it. But there is, you know, some symptoms can include memory loss and, of course, decreasing functionality. According to PAHO, dementia is now one of the major causes of disability and dependency. Let's go back so you can see that. It's now a major cause of disability and dependency in older adults. And symptoms, I said, include memory loss. It varies, of course, but these are some: difficulties with thinking, problem solving, and language.
I'm gonna jump in here because you're a little bit over time.
Oh, okay, so I'm gonna run forward. So, the short of it is, we don't have much case in Jamaica yet. The tribunal is here in its first awards. But I am convinced that the interpretation will be that all persons suffering from dementia will not be classified as persons with disabilities. It will come down to the level of impairment, mental, physical, intellect, or sensory. I know in UK it's classified as a dementia. The wording is different in Jamaica and with UN. So it is not likely that person at the earliest stages, but later when there's impairment, it will apply. Medical experts and case law, you're going to play a key role in guiding a tribunal as to whether somebody has a disability in relation to reasonable arrangement. So you're going to find that more persons will be reaching out to you as the act takes effect even more and that people are noticing their rights and going forward. So negative implication, the protection offered under the act will therefore not be there for all persons with dementia.
I think it's not that it won't be there, but I think it will have to be interpreted. And I think that's what, I think you're very right about the fact that the time to get the precedent is now, what before the 5-year review, which I think is what you're kind of nudging us towards. So if you are someone who is lucky enough to be very, very early and has no discernible disability while having a dementia diagnosis, very little discernible disability while having a dementia diagnosis, but certainly I think that I think it gives a little space for interpretation, or am I wrong?
It does, but you have to have the impairment. You have to be able to prove that impairment.
That you have impairments, which I think would be, I think that you could do that with dementia, but let me let you get on, continue.
And let me point out something importantly, because I checked with the JCPD, because you can apply to register a person with a disability. At this point, they're not registering anybody with dementia unless there is this impairment. But medical evidence is important because for registration, they have to have a medical report. So that's why I still think medical practitioners, you're going to have a key role to play in how this goes forward. And also in assisting the tribunal, which will also depend on medical evidence in particular cases. So I'm not going to say it's a wholesale exclusion, but there's some medical evidence that is going to be needed, so you'll play a role.
And I think that is, we've said that before. I think that is fair. The burden of proof should fall. We've spoken about the cultural aspects. The burden of proof to prove that you have a disability is, you know, it should fall on the person who is trying to
alleging, and that's in all cases.
Right.
I'm sure Jamaica will adopt that principle. Finally, my key takeaways. Caregivers, you have a key role to play. right? The persons with dementia who cannot fight for their own rights, you are the one who will have to know the act, make that complaint to the JCPD, or else the act will be worth nothing if nobody is trying to enforce their rights, right? So I know you already have a lot to do, but you also have this important role to play. And also that will help stopping discrimination, because if everybody is actually taking the discriminatory action and doing nothing, then the law will be of no moment whatsoever. Healthcare providers, I think I already told you, but you have a lot to do. You cannot provide services without, you have to provide services without discrimination on the basis of disability. You have to depend on free and informed consent unless there is some mental incapacity under the Mental Health Act. Medical practitioners, occupational therapists, etc., you have a key part to play in advising as to whether a person has a disability in keeping with the definition in the Act. So you also cannot go outside of the Act. Wait. And also, you're going to find more employees, because I have clients now, and I'm saying, go to I'm saying occupational therapists, you know who else can tell whether what reasonable arrangements can be made to keep somebody in a job. More employees are going to be coming because we're sending them to you.
Yes, yes. We're happy to have them.
Right?
We're happy to have them. Jamaica needs to change in that way, definitely.
Right. So you will have a key role to play. And thank you for listening to
Wait,
me.
why you skip by your last screen so quickly? Skip back at it.
The computer running. So this is my law firm, Bennet Campbell Law. You can see my Gmail there if you want to get to me. And you can have a look at my website. I also do caregiver agreements. A lot of them, caregivers keep coming to me.
No,
so you
well,
want to protect your parent with caregivers, you have to be careful. I do
yes.
calls of attorney, anything to do with the elderly. I assist in that regard. So.
And I'm going to jump in and say, please remember, you can always reach out to me, either at Dementia Caribbean or Home Care for Jamaica, and say, Debra, I'm trying to get in touch with Camille. I'm happy to share any kind of contact information for any of our speakers, past and present, that you need, if you need to get in touch with them, because that's the point, is to expose you to these resources so that you can begin to access them. Camille, thank you a million times for that. I have questions for you, but I have questions for you. Are you running out?
No, I'm right here.
Great. I have questions for you, but I want to do two things. Patricia has patiently waited, and Patricia, I'm coming to you, but there is Tequila. Is it Tequila? I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Your hand has been raised for a really long time, and that's really all my fault. Do you have something that you want to add? I'm going to allow you to talk, so you can unmute yourself if you want, and add if you have something, because your hand has been raised for a while. I don't know if Tequila, or maybe Tequila just has her hand up, because that can happen. That can happen sometimes in things. But Tequila, if you have something that you want to say, you can unmute your mic and say it, because your hand has been up. If not, I'm gonna lower your hand for you, and get into my introduction for Patricia. Tequila. No, I don't think she wants. I think she probably just I think she probably just had her hand up. That happens to me in some Zoom meetings as well. Hush, Tequila. But I have to make sure that I'm not ignoring you. So let's move on to Patricia. Patricia Naraindutt. Patricia is a caregiver with over 24 years of experience. She was a caregiver for her own sister and mother, and has provided care in a variety of care settings, including veterans care, which any of us who are familiar with the United States Veterans Administration, when I was doing my DPT, we worked with a lot of people in Veterans Administration. And while we always hear the complaints, it is a vast and I think really wide organization with a lot of very hardworking healthcare professionals in it. So Veterans Administration, to me, and being involved in veterans care is a very, very high accolade, a very high standard of care. She has established recreational therapy departments in assisted living settings and expanded activity options for clients that she has had in long-term care, rehab settings, and memory care settings. She is also certified by the American Association of Christian Counselors for adults, families, and children. And she is very passionate about service. When I met Patricia, she just radiates it. She's very passionate about service. And most importantly, the importance of self-care for their caregivers. I'm excited to have her here because I don't think I have a caregiver support group, and I don't know how to get through to a lot of my caregivers about the need to take care of themselves. You know, they're very focused on delivering care and taking care of, but when you're trying to get them to sort of separate and take care of themselves, it's very uphill. So I'm super happy to have Patricia here. She has a real heart for that aspect of it, which is helping our caregivers to take better care of themselves. Patricia, I'm going to mute my mic and let you go ahead with your presentation. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your patience as well, because the legal aspect is something that it just takes some time. And I really wanted to give Camille the opportunity to get that all out there. So thanks for your patience. We'll give you the same opportunity.
Of course. Oh, no, I'll talk fast. Thank you so much. My name is Patricia Naraindutt, and I want to say good morning, good day, good afternoon, and good evening to whoever you are. And I know you are everywhere right now, so thank you. And for you, Miss Debra, I would like to thank you for inviting me to this. It's a pleasure. And so with these years of experience, I thought I'd put them into some good work. And I wanted to start by speaking to the caregiver. I hear you and I see you. The work you do is priceless. I know because I am also there. Yet, what you are doing and how you feel is that you are going to feel overwhelmed, overworked, underappreciated, and underpaid. And I know you hear me loud and clear when I say that. On that note, let me say this. Do the best job you can daily. You make a difference for those who need it the most. Keep in mind, they were once like you and me. And that's the truth. They really were. And they still are. Behind the person, there is the person who's still there. Why I started doing this is right now I have not only friends, but some of those that I worked with now have dementia, heart attacks, nervous breakdowns, and cancer, and some are no longer with us. Be sure to make yourself a priority. I could not stress that enough. Self-care is needed and necessary. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. You may even say, but Patricia, that's easy for you to say. I don't have time. I understand. It's not easy for me to say, but I know it firsthand. As a caregiver, as a single mom, the difficult marriage, the health issues, the money problems, all the above, and the no time for myself. I've been there in all of those places, and I know that you relate to what I'm saying. So when we say that there's no time, all of it is very familiar to me. If you need help, and I know that a lot of times we do, people will say this, if you need help, let me know, until you actually need it. And when you reach out, you find that people become busy, they're unavailable, or it's not a good time for them. But it doesn't mean we stop asking. And sometimes we reach out only to family members and close friends. And I'll be honest and tell you this, my personal experience, a lot of times it came from people that I did not expect it from. Okay, so don't rule anyone else out. Don't just look in that small circle, look beyond that, and don't stop asking. Okay, today I want to encourage you to do the best regardless of your circumstances. The kindness and love and the care that you give to someone can never be replaced. Your work is priceless. There's no amount of money that can ever replace that. And I want to say, I appreciate you, and I know that everyone here appreciates what you're doing. It's hard work, but yet it is the most rewarding at the end of that day when you're done doing what you did. Your heart is at peace knowing that you give to someone who truly needed it and you made a difference. What you do when no one is looking is vital. I can't begin to stress this enough. It's one thing to do it when everyone is looking, but what we do when no one is looking, you do it for the person without a voice, and they're at the mercy of our care. So do the best you can. I hope this is going okay so far. Do it with love.
You're doing great. Sorry, you're doing great. I don't think there's a dry eye in the house.
Oh God, but I do have to say this because
I think it's fantastic. Keep going.
This comes from the heart because I know it and I know everybody needs it.
Definitely.
You know,
I think caregivers definitely need to hear this. You're doing great. Keep going, my love.
Thank you. Whatever you do it with love, with gentleness and patience. Sometimes we face challenges and lots of difficulties when someone is being rude or disrespectful, and we still need to provide care and love and support. Do not take it personally. It's not about you, and it's not about me. So do not engage in arguments. Instead, use the right approach. And you say, well, what does that mean? What I mean is this. What we say and how we say it matters. Our choice of words and our tone of voice makes the difference. Just let it pass, say absolutely nothing. And when the insults and the rudeness stops, let another minute go by and continue on like it never happened. More than likely, to the person who just did all of that, don't remember it anyway. So why should you? Don't take it personal. It's not their fault. And what I found over the years, the only independence they have left is what they say to us, because everything else has been taken. So let's just process that for a moment. When that's the only independence we have, when someone has to feed you and change you and do everything else, and they were once like you and me, please tell me what else is left. So I understand from your viewpoint, because I'm there too. Never take it personal. What I've learned is this. When you think you're going to say something, sip some water. An older person told me this. Patricia, when you want to say something or you think you might say something, take a sip of water. And I said, but why? And she said to me, it doesn't matter how much food you have in your mouth. You can still say to somebody what you want to say, but the smallest amount of water in your mouth, you must swallow before you speak. And if you don't believe me, try it, because I did when she said that, and it made perfect sense. So I say to people, sip some water. Okay? Anyway, yeah, they're not going to remember what they've said. So don't even go there. It's the only independence they have. Okay? Back to the caregiver. This is not an easy journey, but you need to make time for yourself. Okay? I want to use this example because everybody has a cell phone, not everybody has a car, right? You must charge your cell phone or it won't work. Agreed? What would happen if you forgot your charger at home and you had to use your cell phone all day long? What do you think would happen, or what would you do? I'll tell you what would happen. You would reach out to somebody and ask if they had a charger you can borrow for a few minutes. And if they said no, you would even ask somebody else that you don't even know that well if they had a charger you can borrow for a few minutes. So if we can do this for our cell phones, why do we say we do not have time to invest in ourselves? Okay? I hope that's making sense to you. You will not stop at asking until you find someone that you can borrow a charger and recharge for a few moments. Self-care didn't come to me naturally. I had to make it happen for myself. I was used to giving to everybody, but I forgot about me. And as a caregiver, we tend to feel bad. How many of us do that? We feel bad by saying no, like we have to say yes to everything. And people will come to you because you're the person that never says no, right? Okay. So I started with blocking time on my calendar and planner, even when I didn't know what I was going to do with that time. And at first, I really didn't. I blocked it saying, this is Patricia's time. Even if it was for 30 minutes in the morning when I woke up and the last thing before going to bed, blocking time. If I couldn't block an hour, I blocked half an hour. And if I couldn't block half an hour, I blocked 15 minutes. Do what you can do with the time that you have, even if it's 5 minutes. It makes a difference to sit back and just breathe. Once I did this, things started to fall into place. And then I started realizing what I really wanted to do for me. I love reading. I love drawing. I love music. I like these things, but things that I wanted to do for myself that I was no longer doing because I was so tired. I didn't just work one job. I worked 2, and at times I worked 3. And on top of that, while I was working 3 jobs, I took care of my sister when she had cancer. So I worked 7 days a week at that specific time frame. But yet I had to make time for Patricia. I had to look at myself as a third person and say, I need to make time for her, because if I don't take care of her, she's not going to last. So look at yourself and please don't say you don't have time. If you can find time to do everything else and scroll through your phone, that we all do, we can put aside some of those things. And I find that the conveniences also becomes an inconvenience. The cell phone has voicemail, text message. It can alert you for an emergency, but yet we try to take every single call because we think everything is that important. And the truth is, it's not. So prioritize what is of importance and do that, please. Do it for you. And I would like to say this. Time is the most precious gift we have. However it is spent, that's how it is used. We can never go back and undo time. Money, I can take it and put it aside and say, you know what? I'll look for a better deal and get something later. But I cannot do that with a single minute of my life. So whatever I do with this time, and I want to advise you as well, spend your time wisely, because we are being spent. Whether we like to say that or not, that's the truth. So why not spend it in the most positive and optimistic way, that when we look back and we reflect, it will always be something good, even in our worst moments. Okay? Our health. Your health is your wealth. With it, you can accomplish anything. Without it, it doesn't matter what you have. You cannot accomplish anything. And I've seen that when I've looked after millionaires. that money in the end did not matter. It made no difference. It couldn't buy health. It couldn't buy what was needed and necessary. Surround yourself with what you love, the people that you love, do what you enjoy. That's what life is about. That when you give back freely of yourself, and you are spent wisely. I hope this is all making sense. And there are some of the things that I like. I love these little quotes. Healing is connected with healing others. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And this one is my absolute favorite, and this is where I made changes in my own life. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. When I did not see the change I was looking for, I became the change. And I made changes within myself, and then the things around me started to change. People will sometimes look at you and make you feel bad when they say, "You've changed." Here's my advice to you, with a simple response: yes, I have. And that's not a bad thing. So on that note, I want to share with you some things that I would like to share with you is that I made sure I give it to Dr. Debra to share with you in regards to a checklist that I would like you to have to prioritize you, your loved one, but doing things for yourself, even if it's taking 5 minutes to step aside and do some deep breathing, detox the mind, get some fresh air, step outside, say something kind to someone else, even when you feel like that's not what you want to say. You will never regret doing what's right, but you will regret doing what was wrong. If you have a conscience, you will. So do it right the first time. And so I will let her share my resources that I have out there for you. And I would like to say this. Thank you for letting me be here today. It's been a pleasure, and thank you to Dr. Debra. You have been an inspiration to me, and I appreciate you having me. And what I want to say to the caregivers, stay positive, do the best you can, and remember this: you are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Patricia. That's such a lovely, was really lovely. As I said, I don't know if there's a dry eye in the house. To be honest, that was really lovely. Caregivers, Carla had said it before in the chat, you really are not maybe appreciated all the time or appreciated enough. I love that comment about I love the comments about taking a sip of water. I need to do that more often. Like take a sip of yeah, I love I really love that take a sip of water direction. That was badly needed. The resources that Patricia is talking about are in the chat. I've attached it. I'm maybe looking a little preoccupied here because I'm sticking everybody's LinkedIn links in the chat as well, so that we can you can follow everybody on LinkedIn as well. You can follow me as well, but you can find me. Just type in Debra Callender and you'll find me. But I want you to really just click on everybody's links and give them a follow on LinkedIn as well. And Patricia's resources are also in the chat. So if you look and you see, it should have her name on it, and it's a PDF that I've attached in here.
Yes, and the email is also listed. I'm pretty much sure my email is listed there as well.
Yeah, so you can definitely get in touch, and that really needed to be said. I see another attendee has his hand up. 1 second, sorry guys, I'm doing too many things at once. So Rowan has raised his hand. Helen, yeah, that drinking water thing really applies.
Oh my goodness. It's so true. Yeah.
That
Just a
Bennet
small
is going to be drinking a lot of water.
it keeps your composure, and it brings a sense of calm because you have to swallow before you open your mouth again. And to me, that is so key. And if we keep that with us, it makes a difference. It truly does.
It's that was amazing. I'm telling you, like every time I do anything with others, I can't say enough about partnership and collaboration to everyone who is listening to us. Always consider it. You will always learn new things when you collaborate with others. Never ever think, that you know everything in any area at all. And also every voice is needed. I said it, me and Patricia have had that conversation. Every single voice is needed. Different voices are needed. So I cannot thank you enough for that. Now I have questions for everybody on the panel. Okay. So Ruan, I see your hand raised and I'm trying to get to you. I'm not sure what's going on here. Give me a minute with Zoom. Because Patricia Masters goes, will these presentations be available to participants? Patricia, thanks for that question. We're live streaming on YouTube, so everyone can go ahead to YouTube at Debra Callender, Dementia Care Physiotherapy, and the recording will be there. I believe I did the setting for Zoom to send the recording to everyone who attended. So you should receive it. If you don't receive it and you want it, just email me at dementia-caribbean@gmail.com and I'll pop it off to you. So anyone who doesn't receive it, you can find it on YouTube. I think I did the setting to send it to everyone. So feel free to, if you don't get that afterwards, then please tell me so that I can pop that off to you. Rowan, I'm trying to allow you to talk. Do you want to unmute and ask your question, or because I see that your hand was up? Rowan Hilton? No? Oh, there you are. Go ahead, Rowan.
Good morning. My apologies. It was an error.
Oh, okay, great. Hush, that's all right. I do that all the time in Zoom meetings. You're not alone. That's cool. That's cool, Rowan, and no problem. So I've got questions for everybody. So, God bless everyone who didn't. Patricia goes, thanks for responding. Of course, Patricia. I try my best to respond to everything. So let's start at the beginning and let's end at the end. Okay, so let's start with Rianna. Rianna, are you around? Because sometimes yeah, she is here. Yay! Sorry, I wasn't sure. Sometimes when you're in a webinar, guys, for everyone who might not have been a speaker, and I think everyone has been a speaker by now at something, sometimes you kind of wander off to do something else, especially during the thing. So I wasn't sure if Rianna had kind of wandered off a minute. Please, as I've said, I've stuck everybody's LinkedIn profiles in the chat. Please click Rianna's. I promise you that's one of the most interesting LinkedIn bios I've ever seen anywhere. Rianna has a real journey and you should get to know her because it would be very inspirational. All of them do. Patricia, Camille, please follow them all on LinkedIn because you get information. I've stuck Camille's website in the chat as well for everybody who now is thinking, I need to get some advice on something. And Patricia's resources are there. So please take advantage of all of those things that come with the webinar. Bye, Kathy. Kathy saying, have to leave now. Great job. Thank you so much, guys, for all of the accolades on it. Rianna, if I understood your presentation, because from what I understand, you really were kind of having a look at whether or not there's organized policy. Am I correct in terms of dementia specifically? Carl goes on, ounce of practical advice is worth a pound of theory. Thank you, Carl. I might come at you. Be prepared. Brace yourself, Carl. I might ask you to speak at the next Dementia Caribbean. So thanks for participating and for coming. So where we speak about not having organized dementia policy, and both Camille and Rianna, I think it would be nice for both of you to sort of talk about this. My 5 cents on it is, as I've said, I think because there's a resource constraint, I think in most Caribbean environments, certainly in terms of being able to draft extensive legislation for very, very specific things. I would more want to look at integrating dementia into our existing acts insofar as we can. Having said that, I do think that because it is, even if you look at acts that speak to aging or acts that speak to disability, dementia is kind of a bit unique, as I mean, and it's, I do think there, you know, on the other hand, there's an argument for having like specific policy for it, because if you look at it as disability, I mean, in the UK, it is part of the Disability Act, but it is a bit tricky between the, you know, because dementia is progressive. So the person is changing over time. And that to me demands, it will demand a lot of resource in like a tribunal or so on to continually reassess and so forth. So I'd be curious to hear from both of you about that, like the pros and cons of having like a specific dementia act or policy. And both of you, I would love you to speak to it. So go ahead, let me close my mouth and let you guys talk. What do you think, Rianna and Camille? What do you think? Whoever wants to go first about how we approach that in a because we have constraints. How many laws do we have? How much? Which department in which legal department in which ministry does that? Is it Ministry of Labor? Is it Ministry of Health? You know, and collaborating can be crazy between such large, you know, large ships. But go ahead, Rianna. I'm all ears. And Camille.
Yeah. Sure thing. No, thank you for your question, Debra. So I think it would be the dementia custodian would be under the Ministry of Health in most Caribbean countries, or it might be under social services. And I know there's specific custodians just on aging in certain Caribbean islands, so then it would fall under their custody. And I think it would take a multi-sectorial approach. So not just the ministry that is responsible for aging, but also like the National Councils on Aging, for example, the Ministry of Environment that people wouldn't even think about involving in dementia, but that is also something their input is basically quite valuable because air pollution is also a risk factor for dementia. So their input is just as valuable. So it really takes a lot of sectors, you know, like the Ministry of Social Services, which I mentioned before, to come together, as well as consultations, because you don't want to develop a policy based on your knowledge, because it can be quite biased and not the actual what's going on the ground at current stages. So having these consultation periods would be quite valuable to understand the status of dementia and the needs to include in the policy. So you could have consultations with, you know, community members. You could host them with like the town councils. I know certain districts, they have their own way of doing things and leadership. So you can speak with the parliamentary, PAL rep, for that district. And yeah, get the information from there and have some kind of evidence base to go on. So I think that was the process that we would take, and then would have the national policy. And then the national policy would then also be factored in to the national budget. And then that's where we can get funding for grassroots organizations, for dementia services and caregivers and caregiving training and whatever. But the national dementia plan is going to be different in different items based on their economic structure, the needs, and and
the agencies, because in Jamaica we are agency heavy. For example, national, and not in a bad way, but we are agency heavy. So, for example, National Health Fund right now would fund most. So if we wanted to mount, say, caregiver, which, you know, that's all my fault, people. If we wanted to mount like island-wide dementia caregiver training, we could do a proposal for that and send it to, we actually have two agencies for that. National Health Fund would be one, and Chase Fund, which is health, something else, sport and something else, that foundation as well. So only thing with National Health Fund, which is they do prefer, as most funding agencies do, to interface with foundations or companies as opposed to individuals, which is absolutely fair. But reasonable, because you have to have transparency, obviously. But so you would have, we do have funding agencies here. I don't know if Mona Aging and Wellness is in the room right now, but I know they had driven funding for the research in dementia that Dr. Eldemar Scherer has done. That funding all came from National Health Fund. On the other hand, and that's why I'm saying, like, to me, I think in Jamaica, Camille, you can, because Camille has ministry experience, you can tell me if it how it, but to me, it would require like a tremendous coordination effort to get all of us together to we have National Senior Citizens Council. Wherever you hear council in Jamaica, there is an act that governs it. So when we do an act for something, we usually appoint a council to supervise the act, right? To make sure that it's implemented. So we have national, it's true, we have a council for everything. So wherever you hear council, there's an act behind that, there's law behind that council as well. But I'm not saying that it's impossible. And I do think if we do a national dementia plan, I think one of the things to be contemplated would be, and we also do what you call town hall meetings, right? So we do public, the government, as I've seen it, does tend, when they're gonna do legislation, to do public consultations. I agree with you. But I think any document about a dementia plan, I think, would have to contemplate how many, all of the agencies that would have to become involved to, to really consider and implement that plan, because it has such a knock-on effect for everything. We have a NEPA as well, National Environmental. NEPA, I'm super proud of NEPA as well. We do not burn, it's illegal to burn open trash and so on and so forth. So we do have a lot of the environmental legislation already, but NEPA also would, I think, have to extend to, because NEPA deals with built environments as well in Jamaica in a way that preserves environmental integrity. But I think NEPA could also, Camille, you can jump in here if you want. I think NEPA would also have to look at built-in, so we have like disability ramps and so on, all of that is on the NEPA. But I think NEPA would have to also perhaps expand, because things like signage in dementia are really important. And I don't think I'm not sure NEPA, if that's included now in NEPA's, their scope of practice and so on. But so it really would be a huge coordination effort, and ministries in Jamaica, I think ministries everywhere are lumbering things. But I thank you for talking about it. And I said, I think it's really interesting. Camille, what do you think? Do you think we need to have a dementia policy to coordinate?
All right. Every legislation starts with a policy, right? The legislation that make a difference, that are different, they start with lobbying, and it starts with ministries. Because remember that you have these councils and these bodies, but in terms of making laws, purview is in the parent ministry, right? So you have dementia, I would say it's Ministry of Health.
Health, yeah.
Then senior citizens, so a lot of the persons affected will be senior citizens. Then senior citizens falls under the Ministry of Labor.
Labor.
Right, and Social Security. So you see already you're having health, you're having labor involved. Now, I would also say disability, right? Because although the JCPD is not treated as a disability,
as yet,
because of their view on impairments, lobbying would need to be done there. So the JCPD, though, also parent ministry, Ministry of Labor.
Yes. So
although you have the JCPD administering the act, the responsibility for disability still overall falls within labor and social security.
Social security.
When you're saying health and social security, parent ministries. So it's like NEPA, I don't know which ministry that falls under.
Is it, let me look. Is it environment?
Yeah, they keep changing names. I think it's so. So unfortunately though, because of the fact that you start at the ministries, you know what happens if you're not lobbying and pressing after you have presented something, it will stay there.
Yes.
So when it came to all this JCPD, there was a lot of lobbying and a lot of writing and asking for key meetings. So you see that, but it has to start somewhere. So if you want dementia to be considered in this way, you really have to start the lobbying with all
Advocacy, yes, I see. I take your points. It's lovely to hear that. And as I think I'm just gonna throw it out there. It is the Ministry of Land, Environment and Change, by the way. God bless Google. But which NEPA would fall under. I think that is part of our office of the Prime Minister, but I think we're getting too Jamaican here. But you get my point. Like it's
Yes,
a coordination.
yes.
I think it would be lovely. Go ahead.
Frustrating, but it's something you have to push for.
Yes, and I think that we need to join again. I think this ADI has done a lot of work there, Alzheimer's Disease International, with What's Your Plan, which I think was last year's campaign and so on. But I do think there's scope across the Caribbean, and I'm saying it because me pushing in Jamaica and Rianna pushing in Dominica and someone else pushing in Trinidad and someone else pushing. I think it would really be great if we unite as whatever associations are. I think the most prominent ones are from ADI, and we really draft a reasonably common dementia plan. As I mean, the name for the agencies will change for Dominica as opposed to Jamaica, as opposed to Barbados, as opposed to, but I think it would be nice as a region and possibly to push that also maybe through CARICOM. Rianna, go ahead.
Yes, I'm so glad that you mentioned CARICOM, because I was just about to say there's a Caribbean Charter on Health and Aging, and that was organized and endorsed by CARICOM, but that was in 1999. And I don't think there's been any further.
Yeah, probably not. And we have probably not. And we have a lot of, we have PAHO and then we have CARPO,
Exactly.
CARPO is quite the red tape tunnel. And so we also have like a lot of health agencies that kind of floating around out there. But I do agree. I think the easiest and strongest point, Rianna, I think would probably be CARICOM.
Yeah.
If you can, since they have some precedents already drafted and stuff, I think it would be very interesting to see agencies, all of us throughout the Caribbean having some sort of, focused group that drives a policy that can be tabled or presented at CARICOM, because all of us also, I mean, my Minister of Health currently is Christopher Tufton, and he is, to use the slang, he is with it. Like, if you present it to him and he will, one of his platforms is mental health, and dementia does fall under that. So I do think we can also, I'll be the first to say, I don't think I've used my thank you, Stacey, for thanking us. I do think that like my support group, the support group you have in Dominica and so on, I think we have to sort of begin to turn them more into advocacy, petitioning, more physical events and so on, so that we can, and as I said, I think we should do it under a banner, under us, no disrespect to ADI or anyone else, because they are who have helped us to organize at least this far in terms of having associations in almost every territory. But I think we need to, it would be just, I think, much more coordinated to do that as just a Caribbean effort. And Camille, you're right, where I've only been back 2 years, and it's, like a lot of different things. But I do think we have to work on, I'm forming a foundation with the name of this webinar, Dementia Caribbean. And we need to, yeah, man, definitely, because we have to go forward now that we've sort of begun to address some of the needs, and we have that information. We've got to kind of take that forward. But as I said, throughout the region, and that I think is, if we can get a group of all of our associations and really look at doing a dementia policy that's relevant to all of us as Caribbean citizens, I think that would be lovely. I think that would be a next step. Camille is right. We've got to get sort of more on the street, as we say in Jamaica. Like we have to sort of write more letters. Really have more organized advocacy for things like disability and so on. Because the Disability Act, I think that is it's very interesting, because like in principle, things like discrimination, things like the Disability Council, I'm sorry, I think if people who are living with dementia, who are in the early iterations, if they were to begin to petition Council of Disabilities in numbers, they would have to, that's the nature of it. They pivot and they focus where we create an act. As Camille said, what we're looking for is the reaction to the act, and that reaction to the act drives amendment. So I think that as I said, for sure, it's great information for me, because we've got to kind of get boots on the ground in terms of advocacy, for dementia itself, and giving people directions for how they can act, like. Having said that, now I can go back to my support group, most of whom is in here, hi guys, and say, guys, we need to write letters, we need to look at and ask my doctor's network, do you have instances where you're hearing about this kind of reporting, where people are saying, I feel like I've been unfairly dismissed. I feel like I because I said I have dementia, I've been sent home even though I'm pretty fine. Carl is saying 100% between it being behind it being a Pan-Carib initiative. You keep talking, Carl. When we draw you in, you see. When we draw you in, you might have to move here. The Caribbean is like nowhere else. It takes a lot of time to get things done. But Kekisha, you're requesting what? Or CMEs? Oh, we didn't do CMEs for this. This is open to every single person. CMEs I do for my health focused. So if I do a course for allied health, or if I do a course for nurses or so on, I do semis. This one I do just for the general, everyone who wants to come. And I want to thank all of at one point it was 150 people watching, and we have almost, I think it's over 400 people that registered. So I want to thank everybody I was really, really happy. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the nurses from University Hospital who have come through, the third year students. Thank you so much for coming and looking in. I hope you learned something. Patricia.
Yes, ma'am.
The only thing that I wanted to say to you is, I think we would want to, my focus, listening to you, and I've said this to you before, my focus is, I think I have more of a heart for like the actual person living with dementia and advocacy for them.
Yes.
I think that balance of also, really paying attention to the caregiver and giving them practical ways, because you can always say to the caregiver, as I do, you need to take care of yourself. But like how?
Exactly.
And like when, because I looked after my mother, and honestly, I don't even know if I comb my hair most days when I was doing that. It's like, it's a lot. You got to keep an eye on them. And also, they have meal times, they have other needs and stuff. So it is hard to figure out where
do you fit in?
The practical stuff you said. And also I know a lot of my caregivers really struggle with the unkind comments. So, and I'm happy for them to hear from someone else that this is not personal. So all of you in here who are in my support group, or your caregivers, if you're not in my support group, you need to, and you want to be in my support group, you can email me homecare, the number 4JA, and it's on the, if you go to any of my social media, you can find my email, super easy. You can say, I want to be in the group, send me, and I'll send you a little questionnaire, and then we'll include you. So anybody wants to join my group, anybody wants to join Patricia, she has a support group as well. Rianna has support groups, people. There's no shortage of supports around here, okay? And you don't have to be in just my support group. I'm happy if you're in everybody's support group, because if you need support, right, look at your options for that. You don't have to be constrained, just because I come from Jamaica, I need to be in the Jamaican support group. You can look around, different voices speak to different people. And that's important, that you really are making sure you get your needs met, okay? So it is 11:34. I want to thank everybody. Rianna, Camille, Patricia, thank you so much. Dementia Caribbean, for who doesn't know, this takes, no, Helen, there's no cost. Helen is saying, is there a cost to join? No. The support group like Dementia Caribbean is FREE. No, it's free 99. Come on in, just, let us know. And if you email me at Dementia Caribbean or at my address, and say, I want to be in Rianna's support group or I want to be in Patricia's, email me and I'll hook you up. So no, there's no cost for that. It's hard enough being a caregiver without us, charging for support. There are things I charge for, but that ain't it. So thank everybody for being here. This is my mother's birthday. She passed 2 years ago and she was diagnosed with Lewy, well, not diagnosed, she was going into what I think is Lewy body dementia, and she had other issues. So you guys have given us, Patricia's Naraindutt. Pauline's asking, what's your full name? Her Patricia is Naraindutt, Naraindutt. Ghanese like my mother as well. So thank you for giving me such a lovely marker for my mother's birthday this year. Rianna, I know you're smiling because Rihanna's grandfather as well, a lot of us who come to this work, Camille as well, a lot of us who come to this work because of our experiences. So thank you for giving me a really, really happy birthday for my mom. I super appreciate it. You guys have given so much meaning to this. Thank everybody for coming and listening and attending. And I'm going to sign off now. If no one else has any questions, Helen, you're more than welcome. Let me just check quickly for questions in both things. No. So you guys, since there are no more questions, thank you guys so much for your time, which you gave free of cost. And I'm going to wish everybody a great rest of the day. Thank you guys so much. Bye-bye, guys.